I used to tell my dad everything. When I was little, I would tell him what I was thinking and what was on my mind. But I liked the fact that I could keep a few things to myself. It was just me and my dad growing up, so I would spend a lot of time with him, like most elementary school kids do with their parents. My dad loved me to pieces. He was very protective of me and would always make sure that I could have fun without getting hurt. He'd always put me first, and I loved him for that. I remember that he'd read me a bedtime story every night when I was little. Then he'd end it with a kiss on the cheek and a "Sweet dreams, see you in the morning. I love you." But when middle school rolled around, things started to change. I made more friends and started discovering myself. And so, because of that, I started becoming somewhat distant with my dad. I started getting into music and the latest gadgets and relationships, both with friends and romantically. I really liked this girl, and even though I wasn't allowed to date, I just admired her from afar. During those times, I would write what I felt in my journal. In fact, I wrote in it so much that sometimes I would forget what time it was. I would write everything, my thoughts and feelings, how I felt about certain people and things, and I told it what I liked and didn't like. I even wrote how I felt about my dad and myself. But those days were also full of a lot of pain, too. I would be bullied and picked on, and I even started cutting myself for a very short time, so nobody found out. But I wrote it down in my journal, only for me to know. When high school rolled around, everything became more intense. I would often find myself trying to fit in, and whenever I didn't, I would get bullied hard. One day, I came home with a bruise on my head. When my dad asked what had happened, I just told him I had fell off a tree I was climbing at recess. But what really happened was I got hit in the face with my math book, on purpose. Suddenly, writing in my journal didn't feel pleasurable anymore. It just felt like a therapist that I could tell all my feelings to, but still not get the answers. I couldn't tell my dad. I wouldn't because I would probably feel a lot worse if he reacted harshly. No, I wasn't doing drugs or alcohol or anything, but I was still doing things to hurt myself. I would purposely cut myself and punch myself and do everything I could to make myself feel the pain on the outside to numb the pain from the inside. I felt so crushed and alone and just plain dead inside. I lost my friends to my bully, and pretty soon it felt like everyone had turned against me. So every day after school, I would go home, write in my journal, and cry softly in my pillow until I heard Dad's car pull up in the driveway. Everything I wrote in that journal was real. I would always think that when I'm older and I look back in my journal, it would be a nostalgia of wonderful memories. But really, it's just a painful drive on memory lane. One day before school, me and my dad got into an argument over my curfew. I came home late last night, and so my dad was angry and worried. It ended with Dad telling me to go to school and that we'll talk about it later. After a long day at school, I came home to see Dad's car in the driveway. He's home early, I thought. I had a gut feeling as I entered the house to see that Dad was not downstairs. I went to my room to see Dad reading my journal. He had read every page up to now. Then it all came back to me. The cutting, the self-harm, the rejection, the feelings I felt and what I thought about myself and Dad. A rush of anger overcame me as I was about to scream. But Dad looked up with tears in his eyes, looking at me with pain and pity. But I couldn't see that because I was just so angry that he betrayed my trust. I grabbed my journal and put it back in my backpack. Before Dad could say anything, I ran downstairs and out the door. I didn't stop running until I was out of breath. So many thoughts raced through my head as I was out of breath from running. I was furious with my dad, but also with myself. I guess it was partly my fault for acting suspicious and distant. It's not like we didn't spend time together, but I guess I shouldn't have been so weird, I guess. But the anger I felt boiled up again. How dare Dad read my journal without my permission? Those were my thoughts and my feelings and my problems. It's my life, and I didn't ask Dad to make it his. I sobbed so hard out of anger and disappointment in myself. I didn't know what to feel. It started pouring raining, but I didn't care. I was not going back home. I couldn't say I hated my dad, because I didn't. I hated myself for letting this happen. Why did I leave my journal laying out in the open on my bed, I thought. I saw car lights pull up and a figure stepping out of the car. I was about to run when I heard a familiar voice. Noah? It was my dad. He looked so worried and tired that I couldn't help but feel bad for him a little. He was probably looking for me the minute I ran out the door. I ran up to him. He gave me the biggest hug I've ever gotten. I'm so sorry, Dad, I sobbed. I thought about all the years of pain I suffered, and it felt like a miracle to know that somebody cared. Somebody loved me. I'm sorry, too. I had no idea what was actually going on. Why didn't you tell me? My dad cried. Even in the dark rain, I could see my dad crying tears of joy and confusion and love. I was afraid, I said. My baby boy, I love you, and that will never change. All the pain washed away a little, along with my anger. We both went to the car, and I told my dad every single thing I felt and what I did starting from the day I started falling down into the dark. Dad listened to every word. I could tell he was hurting like I was when the trouble started. It's okay. You're not alone. We'll get through this together, he said. I felt so relieved, like the sun finally started shining on me. It felt good. In the morning, we reported the bullies to the school board, and the police actually got involved, and I was never picked on for the rest of the year. I started talking to my dad more, and we finally got back to how we used to be. I might be cringy to say this, but my dad is my friend. And that was something I was too blind to see at first. I ended my journal with my last entry. My dad saved me. He's my real hero and best friend. Thanks. I love you, Dad.